Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, well-being and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal well-being. Welcome to the 65th episode of the Diverse Minds podcast. And today's episode, I'm going to be talking about why training isn't a panacea, but part of your wider strategy to create a positively productive workplace. And I'm going to be focusing on mental health and wellbeing training, specifically aimed at workplaces, so non-clinical, and equality training, specifically race and race equality training. Now, I really wanted to talk about this because recently I've experienced a lot of stress and anxiety coming from clients or potential clients and people wasting my time thinking that training is a sticking plaster or the answer to everything. Maybe there's something in the air, or perhaps you think or people think I can work miracles. Well, I wish I could, but I really can't. What I can do is I can diagnose, use my expertise, empower, but please don't make your emergency or your panic my crisis. Training is, of course, super important, but it's not a panacea and it won't solve systemic dysfunction and underlying issues and things that are potentially going wrong. It's not a sticking plaster, as I like to say. Please don't ice the mouldy cake. It might look beautiful on the outside, but when you cut into it, the cake is not fit to eat and it's gone off and it's really unpleasant. So you absolutely need to care about this if you are spending money on high quality or any training at all. You really don't want to put that money down the drain. And it doesn't matter which sector you're from, whether it's charity, whether it's public sector, whether it's private sector or corporates. You need to know how to use the learning that you pay for and adapt it and cascade the message out to teams and organisation-wide and link it to your strategy. So maybe a few of these things that I'm going to talk about sound like you. And maybe this is the problem that you've had. You feel you have to do something, there's been an issue or a problem, and training is the answer. It's used to plaster over those cracks. You think, okay, so I've got to do some training, and you frantically post on LinkedIn trying to find the best person for the kind of training that you need. You don't really know how this might help or solve anything or tie into a strategy, but at least you're doing something. Your manager asks you to sort something out, so you can't really question the motive. So you just think, if I can find someone, maybe I'll get a recommendation. Good is good enough. You don't have a clear comms plan to roll it out. But, you can just say what you've done in the company-wide e-newsletter. That'll do, right? And that goes to everyone in the business. So they'll see that you've been doing something. Or you want all the information on a particular topic because something might have gone wrong in 30 minutes. And then everyone will be ready and all the bad practices will vanish. Well, I hate to break it to you, but they're not going to. So maybe you want to think more about your training and your training strategy, and you don't have enough money to book the training itself. Well, I do offer power hours, as that's 60 minutes for you to talk through an issue with me for £150 plus VAT. And I've also developed, as a result of many people being unsure of what they want and effectively wasting my time, a form that you can complete and send to me around the specific things that you think will help you and the needs that you have. So what I want to say is it's really important for people like me, so trainers, coaches and consultants, for us to have a framework from you as a potential client or a client. When people ask for a moon on a stick, it's incredibly difficult for me, I think, or anyone in my sector to meet all your needs, especially when you've only got a time frame of 30 minutes. Please also bear in mind it's not fair to ask for endless proposals. That's exhausting for us, particularly me. I like to give a one-page very clear overview, but when I do spend a bit more time on it, and recently I've had to chase up a few clients, interestingly from the charity sector, one of whom I had a conversation with on the 28th of August. I sent them a proposal on the 1st of September, and I've only just had a response from them this week. So nearly, 3 months. Now, of course, you have the right to choose another provider. I'm not saying that I'm always the best fit for every organisation, and I understand that. But really, I do think it's fair to ask for some feedback. And a simple no is absolutely fine with a little bit of feedback. It's really not cool, and it's really disrespectful to waste someone's time like that. How would you feel if someone did that to you? So maybe you're thinking, okay, well, I don't do any of those things. Great, well done you. But you will need to consider how the training is part of a bigger strategy. So what are some of the things that you need to consider? So firstly, what's driven the need for this training? Is it part of a wider strategy? Is it a one-off session as a result of staff feedback, an event, an incident, a grievance, something that's happened? And if it is, but it's really important that you're clear on that and really clear about what's driving the training so you can communicate that to your staff and your team and people above you. And also think about what training or what type of training is going to meet that need and how you communicate that back. What are then the learning outcomes that you want to achieve from the training for yourself, for your team, for your staff members, and for the organisation? It's really important to get clear about that. The third thing is, what about the level of readiness in your organisation for this particular type of training? So for race equality training, there may not be readiness there. So health and safety training, maybe your organisation has been doing that and you feel really ready. But what about other types of training? Have potential delegates requested the training? Do managers support it? And do you have senior leadership backing if you need it? That's really important to think about. And then once you've answered those three questions, you can start to think about what are the kind of training that you're interested in. Is it cultural awareness? Is it race allyship? Is it active bystanders? Is it mentally healthy leading manager training? So really start to think about that. Maybe it's all of the above developed in modules, or you work with a provider to develop things in modules. So think about that. And then when would you like the training delivered? So you might think ASAP, but the reality of it is most trainers that I know, most facilitators or people that have their own businesses, we are juggling a lot of things. So we can't just drop everything and deliver the training for you next week. So think about specific dates, and what I would say is at least 4 to 6 weeks as a minimum into the future. So you can work with someone and, in particular for me, I need at least 4 weeks to develop that training and bespoke it for you. How long do you want a session to last? So if it is 30 minutes, you've got to be realistic about that, what you're really going to achieve. And I think you might be better off listening to a podcast and developing some questions, sending that round and getting people to talk about it. Because in 30 minutes, what can you really do? Now, if it's a panel event and you've invited people to speak on a topic, that's very different. So you need to also think about the format. But if you want a full-on training session for 30 minutes, and then you're asking for a content plan and a rehearsal, please remember that 30 minutes of training is about 90 to 120 minutes, so 90 minutes to 2 hours of preparation for me. It's not me doing things on the fly. I do take a lot of time and pride in developing things. So really remember, if you ask for a 30-minute session of delivery, you're actually asking for a 2-hour session, and be realistic about what you can achieve in that time frame. Now, if it's a particularly big topic and you want, maybe 7 sessions of 30 minutes to build on the learning, that's very different. But really be realistic about what you can achieve in the timeframes. Then think about the platforms that you use for training, and also what a facilitator or trainer might be used to using. I've used a lot of online platforms. I've delivered webinars for a good 4 years, but not everyone will be in the same boat. And then, of course, there's the thing of budget, and you need to be realistic. You cannot expect training for £50 to deliver everything for everyone. That's simply not fair. And you need to be realistic about what you're going to get for that, for a particular price. And it is true that you do get what you pay for. So I'm not advocating, someone charging £6,000 for an hour, but you do realistically need to budget between £500 and £1,000 minimum for an hour's work. And remember, someone will have put, it's not just that hour of delivery, it's all the years they've spent. And I talk about myself learning my craft, the ups and downs that they've had, how they've used that learning and how they bring it into the session. And I've been delivering a number of train the trainers recently, and everyone has said it's really difficult to facilitate online. So you have to remember, those of us who have been working in an online space for time, we are actually very adept at doing that. And that does merit and deserve, the price that we are quoting. And what are the factors that you need to consider, but also that you need to communicate with a potential trainer or facilitator? So some of the things that come to my mind or that I've encountered is that, maybe an internal committee has to approve external training. How long does that take? What are the expectations? Maybe you're awaiting an international research or grant funding. You need to communicate that as well. Does finance have to approve external training spend? And how long does that process take? Do you, as the person commissioning the work or group of people, need to speak to other key stakeholders and relay the discussion that you've had with a facilitator, trainer or provider back to that group? And how long is that going to take? Are there any particular health and safety requirements or forms that someone needs to fill out, particularly around modern slavery or, declarations, conflict of interest, anything like that? Do you need to check with the internal training team? Are there things that they could provide that you really shouldn't be going externally for? And if you do you have to have a rationale? Does the CEO or CFO or Chief Information Officer have to approve training? So be mindful of that, and how long does that take? And also the time it might take someone to become an approved supplier. So whether that 4-week chain for notice of work, in my case, will become longer. So it's really important to think about these things, and there might be more for your particular place of work or organisation. And this is where startups and small and medium enterprises can be much more lean and quicker to do this. So once you've thought about all of these things, I think it's really important, because if you get the type of training right, because you know your why, you know how it links to your strategy, and you know how it's really going to help people, you will see tangible changes. And this is not just a sticking plaster. Acknowledging that things will need to be adapted. So maybe the training is good, but you want to then look at it and revamp it and think about how you're going to create that ongoing learning practice. And that's great. Pick the right people to be on that training, the right delegates, and make sure you know how they're told. So one of the most frustrating things is when, I turn up to deliver an online training session, and I go around the virtual space and I say, what are your hopes and concerns, or, your hopes and expectations? And someone says, oh, I just got an invite in my inbox this morning. I don't really know what this is about. You really can't imagine how disheartening that is to hear when you've put in all this work to be really clear about the outcomes and the tangibles that people are going to get from this training. So please make sure that messages are cascaded in the right way with the right communication tools before the training and after the training. And keep up with the learning and make it an iterative process. What went well? What would you like to do differently next time? So remember, training isn't a sticking plaster. It's actually a tool in your toolkit to create a positively productive workplace. Think about the need and the why, how it fits into the wider plan. How does it or will it link to an overarching strategy? What difference do you want it to make now and in the near future and in the far future? How ready are you as an organisation? Are you willing and ready to work with someone respectfully and not demand their time endlessly and realise that they have other commitments? And also, do you have systems in place to ensure training processes are set up smoothly for a trainer, for your delegates and for yourself? So want to know more? Don't forget you can book a power hour with me if you want to talk through some of this. And don't forget the form that I've included to help you think through the kind of training that's going to be useful for you. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode and it's given you some food for thought and things to think about before you jump in onto LinkedIn and request trainers or panic and think you have to panic buy training. And I'll see you on the next episode where we're going to be talking about the 16 days of action for gender-based violence. Thank you so much. Take care and stay safe. See you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.